I guess I was partially correct on the whole setup. So I I can't really say that I called anything on Haku having a a crush on Wendy. 'Cause I feel like that just made sense for how things were kind of set up. Just thinking about obviously the two young dragon slayers, you have one male, one female, and then the thing that kind of made it go from a like maybe whatever that people were saying when it initially showed up was when we first got a display of their personalities. Because Haku clearly in a regular fashion is very polite and he's very friendly, and he was he's very nice to Natsu and Lucy, and he doesn't seem to be really aggressive, at least as of yet. He hasn't done any damage really to anything. But when we saw the whole portion, the first part of his personality, and I figured that he would have to have something that would make him start to actually fight. All of them seem to be like that. They seem to be regular characters, not like ones that are just either Blood Knights or they're just easily triggered into, I'm just gonna fight you. It's way more of like, oh yeah, I'm a regular person, but if I have to actually do stuff, that I'm gonna actually fight. And Wendy's personality, and obviously how nice and friendly Wendy was, I figured like their personalities would just mesh, and it just seemed like a very likely scenario when it came to their confrontation. Like, I thought that was a maybe thing, just given like the initial setup, and then obviously Mishima had them meet each other, but it was after the whole personality reveal with Haku that I feel like, yeah, this is probably gonna happen the second they run into each other, and it did. But I really liked the display of Haku's character in this chapter, because the first portion was just kind of like generally nice. It wasn't too kind of crazy, just an introduction, and him meeting Wendy, and then I already assumed this was gonna happen. This wasn't even a theory. I just was like, yeah, this is probably just gonna happen. To me, I was way more interested rather in what exactly was gonna happen between like Kirin and Lactus, not from a fighting standpoint, but from what like the level it was gonna be, because of like how unpredictable that encounter was and how that was gonna be like early on. Whereas like the Wendy and Haku one, I was like, this was foreseeable. It was just the events that were gonna happen were what I was more intrigued about in interaction rather than a fight. Because I knew that Wendy wasn't going to be able to match him in a fight. Clearly, like, his speed is just really crazy, and he's just really hacks. Whereas the other Dragon Slayers, like, depending on who they're going to fight, obviously Natsu is currently out right now. We don't know what's going to happen with Suzaku. But I feel like the most logical conclusion, and I'll go about this more in, like, my, predictions video, is that Gaja will show up for Wendy and help, and then it's going to be Gray and Urza versus Misaki and Kiria. But as of this chapter, the setup I did really like. There was obviously that display, as I've mentioned, of characters Mishima seems to like more. He gives them a funnier side. I feel like it's more to either humanize them or just to kind of give them extra traits. Anybody that's not like a villain seems to have somewhat of a nicer, kind of more friendly side to them, and it just comes down to battle and how they're gonna act. Because Diablos isn't like a giant dark guild or enemy empire. They are another guild. They're not a dark guild. They are just another guild that currently are, in a competition to fight Fairy Tail. They're not evil. The only people really we've seen in the guild that you could constitute as that bad, not like that bad, but kind of like awful to a degree, are, I'd say, Kiria and Nibaru, but Nibaru seems to be primitive. He's like Gollum or something. There's something obviously in his backstory that made him this weird, like, I don't know, like almost Neanderthalic-like being that somehow is a Dragon Slayer. And then you have Kiria, who, I don't know, Kiria just seems like this kind of like crazy ass, like hot, and just seems to rush headfirst into any fight and wants to just, apparently eat other Dragon Slayers. So the other ones seem way more kind of tame. Like Mad Mole is like a good example. He's, the funnier one of the group. And you have Scolion, who though looks very evil, he doesn't really come off as evil. A lot of the time he seems pretty chill. It's like when he fights, he's obviously like a different, he's got a different tone to him. But I feel like that's a lot of Dragon Slayers in general, just by like their own personalities and stuff. But I think that's, again, one of the things that you can kind of tie it to, is Mishima giving them extra treatment because of the the focus of these numbers out of the 4, especially of the Dark Dragon Slayer Knights. And I mean, to a degree, the other members of Diablos as well, but definitely all 4 of these right now are being, well, we had Suzaku, so 3 of the 4 are being revealed right now with all, well, I can't say that entirely because Misaki, we haven't gotten really anything with Misaki other than that she seems to be fine teaching stuff to Kiria. But with with Suzaku, we had the thing where he thinks it's really funny, just the idea of people being naked, and you have Haku, who's clearly like really friendly and polite little kid, and then he's got this like little goofy crush on Wendy, and then you have Kirin, who's got like this nonchalant, like kind of goofy way of talking to his opponent, and like between their banter, and he likes having strong opponents. They all have something about them that it comes off as a little bit more comedic, and that's something Mishima has always done, again, for the characters that he's liked more. There's a difference between a character who's just goofy to be goofy and a serious character with a comedic side to it. Like a character, I think a really good character example of something like that is like Kiraku from Bleach. Like that's just I think that's a really good kind of character because it's one of the ones that has a direct flip. It's very easy to tell like that switch on for like when it's time to fight versus like I'm here to hang out kind of thing. Because like some characters are just kind of like as they always are, but the way that authors like combine those kind of extra traits and those kind of like mirrored other sides of characters is always a favorite of mine. So seeing it here, I've very much enjoyed, and I've mentioned I've liked all of Diablos. I think I brought that up also in my last video, but it's like we're seeing that more here. I've liked all of them. They've all been really cool. They've all been entertaining and unique in their own way. They've been really cool to see like these other weird sides to the dragon slaying magic types. I think it's just been a really fun time. And then Diablos was a aspect of the series I didn't see coming entirely. Like I knew that we would eventually maybe run into other dragon slayers if the series was going to continue, but like the idea of a dragon slaying guild was such a fan fiction idea, not like bad fan fiction, but like just the best ideas, like the coolest general fan fiction ideas. The idea of a dragon slaying guild has been a fan idea for a long time, and it's like I remember when people thought the first ranked wizard saint was going to be a dragon slayer, and he ended up being one. It's one of those ones where it's like it feels so the perfect idea of where to put them there. Obviously, God Serena didn't have the best time in the series, but it was cool just to see that kind of spot click. I think that's really the only reason that people were really upset about God Serena is it was a theory that people had for a long time that came true, and then he ended up just getting bopped pretty quick with no real fight. I wish Mishima gave him one fight before there, at least showed the full fight where he fought the other members of the Wizard Saints, and it would have been so much cooler of a defeat for him, and so much more hype for Acnologia. But it is what it is, and it, you know, I still liked the hype factor because it's one of those times, and obviously relevant to now is Georg. It's one of those times that shows what happens when you try and swing too high and the person like way higher up isn't having any of your shit, it just decides to instantly kill you. Like there's obviously other instances throughout fiction, but like those are obviously the best ones to kind of like double combo in because of, you know, the relations to current events with all the dragons and whatnot. But yeah, the Dragon Slaying Guild was something that I always wanted to happen, but I didn't think it was going to happen in 100 Years Quest, because once we first got the dragon gods, I was thinking more of like how it was going to be structured in terms of like each dragon god aspect. I didn't think it was going to be anything with like and then we got the stuff with the White Witch and all of Rebellion and stuff, and then with Rebellious, I was like, okay, that's really cool. That's a cool addition. And then we got the Dragon Slaying Guild, and that was where 100 Years Quest really for me started to ramp up. Like the first couple chapters are cool. They're good setup, they're good world building and whatnot. But it was once we got like Kiria chained up, and then she broke out of that cage and beat that serpent. Like things have just been going crazy since. And Diablos to me has been really cool, and I've liked seeing all of them. And we only really have Misaki left, and hopefully somehow I'm in a forever fence-sitting position when it comes to Georg's status, because like I'm fine with him being like staying dead or coming back. but I want to at least see him do something in a flashback, maybe, if he does it. Otherwise, I want him to come back somehow and actually see him fight. Because, like, he would have been really cool to see, and I liked his design, especially, like, those close-up shots of, like, the weird angular shots with his face and his weird beard hair combo. It just made him look really kind of creepy and menacing, and I get why he died, and I think it makes sense, obviously, for the situation, but it's fine if we don't have him come back, but otherwise, I hope for a flashback fight, or maybe one of the Dragon Eaters can show us something cool with him. But, outside of that, we just have Misaki. We haven't gotten everything entirely from Kirin and Suzaku yet, obviously, as well as with Haku, but we haven't, like, really got to Misaki at all. She's the last one that we're gonna really meet. And whatever her thing is, whatever her kind of, like, extra trait is that makes her unique in her group. So, this chapter, though, I wanted to go on a little rant about Diablos, because I've been very happy with all of them, and after seeing Haku in this chapter, and, you know, getting another character who's pretty funny, pretty goofy, but also cool at the same time, I really loved the panel where Wendy does her wing attack, like her, what exactly is it called? Wave wing, I think it is. Just like, you know, the giant regular tornado that she summons. Yeah, wave wind just drops it right on him. Like, the part where he just tanks the roar, even though it was a little bit weird for the way he said, like, obviously it was a little bit, made him seem a little bit pervy, but at the same time, I thought it was funny that he decided, like, this isn't really going to do damage to me, I'm just going to tank this, and he just, like, lets it hit him. I thought that was pretty funny. That's just one of those things, like, if a character can give a goofy reason why they can, you know, are willing to tank an attack. Another way that I actually thought was pretty funny, just to give another comparison, was it was during, like, the part of One Piece on the roof, when that's what, like, Luffy dared, he, like, put it up to, whoever is last the dodge that attack for Big Mom, I think it was, is the one that's going to be the captain or something, and then all of them end up getting hit by it. Like something like that. If like they can work like a goofy reason for a character just to say, yeah, fuck it, I'm just gonna hit this, like, you know, face check me. I always pretty much am amused by those ones. And this again, it was funny for Wendy because the comedic aspect of it I do find funny. It's not too overdone, but it's just enough to make him silly, yet not too annoying, not too simpish, but he's still fighting. And the part where she uses the wave wind and he runs on the wind, I love that panel. That was so cool. I really wish this was a bigger panel in this chapter. Like, we've already seen Wendy use her wave wind. Like, I would have wished that maybe her panel's a little bigger and her panel's a little smaller and his was bigger. Maybe like restructure this one or just get like a different page to put it on. Because it just looks really cool, the idea of literally this guy running on this tornado. And after that point, he ends up pulling his hood down. And this is, again, also really cool. And I've liked this about the Dragon Eaters especially, is they have a flip, just a quick switch of when they're going from, this is my power, just kind of fighting you, versus, all right, I'm serious, I'm going to have to do some stuff. Like Suzaku, obviously, against like Natsu and Urza just kind of like went through. Obviously Natsu's in base again. And that quick kind of like personality shift. And then Kirin seems to a degree, I'm assuming, switched to a way higher kind of status with his magic, but he seemed for the most part to have the same personality, but he just has that different kind of look in his eyes as he's fighting. Don't have anything from Misaki, but Haku pulls his hood down, and then he's like, his teeth sharpen. And this I thought was really interesting because I wonder if this is supposed to be a visual effect, like times when Natsu is drawn with like all sharp teeth, or if he actually has all sharp teeth. Because he's supposed to be like a white tiger dragon in concept, but we don't know his actual type, because obviously Suzaku was what, like the vermilion dragon in the, I'm pretty sure they fixed it in the officials, because they said scarlet dragon. It used to be red dragon. Actually, no. I think it is still supposed to be red dragon because it's red. Actually, I think he's specifically vermilion. I'll have to look I'll have to look it back up. I keep like fumbling over words every like 5 to 10 minutes in this, but whatever. I can't remember if like he's specifically vermilion or if it's supposed to be red or if it can be either or. Either way, I like that he pulls the hood down and then just decides to move immediately, and he just bull rushes him. But oh, I completely forgot what I was like saying with that last part. But it's like Suzaku's color doesn't have anything to do with his actual type. That's just a title. Like, I would assume, even though Kirin is the yellow dragon, he's not a yellow dragon slayer. It's very clear that those are just kind of aspects to him, since Suzaku's a sword saint dragon slayer. Haku may be the white tiger dragon, but I assume whatever he is, like, in actual dragon slaying attribute, will be something completely different. Same thing with whatever Misaki is. But he just immediately blitzes by her, like, runs right past her, and grabs Irene, because there's a lot of conversation, obviously, with Irene in this chapter. I actually haven't talked too much about Irene in this video. That was kind of funny, but I liked how Irene was talking through Wendy. I thought that was pretty comedic. But at the same time, I'm wondering what Irene now is going to do, since her role is clearly going to be set in this fight. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to show up for a minute and then go away. It seems that she is now going to be a larger piece in the aspect of how this confrontation with Haku is going to go. Because when Haku, which I didn't even mention, I liked when Haku like says stuff about the plushies, and when Panther Lily's like, you know, asking about that, he just points at him, turns him into one. And this was one of the things that I was actually pretty happy about when it came to the chapter, that I did predict that this is what I, at the very beginning, I said, like, well, I can say I was kind of right about some parts and wrong about others, and then kind of like weirdly shuffled in other areas. But I believe this fully. I didn't think like there was going to be a fight. Like, one of my predictions, I didn't think there was going to be a fight, because I was like, well, Haku should be able to just completely destroy Wendy because of obviously where he's at power-wise, and where Wendy is strong, she's not at level with people like Suzaku, and obviously Suzaku should be equal to each other, around level, and even if they are in that plushie state. So even if Wendy got turned into a plushie, she should be able just to use Raise, cancel it out. She used it on Panther Lily, and then on herself, kind of like made a like extra powerful enchantment, and then kind of like permanently set it on herself, which is really cool. That pretty much means that like any form of status effect stuff, if Wendy puts it on, you can't use her throughout the whole fight. As long as she has that up, you cannot use status effect abilities on her or whoever and she ends up putting it on. But Irene, I wish Irene would like told her more stuff before she went, like an idea of like maybe a new enchantment that she could use in this fight. Maybe it'll be more of a fight for Wendy to invent new enchantments, because the idea of enchanting magic is it's super flexible in what it can do, because in its base aspect you are putting magic into something. So the idea of it should be near infinite, because all you're really doing is saying, here, any object whatsoever, potentially a person, object, area, whatever, an attack, putting magic in, and on top of that, she can do types of enchantments by doing that. So you can alter it in various ways, like obviously giving it dragon attributes. She can buff speeds, like she double speed, attack, and defense, do multiple types of enchants. Wendy has a huge arsenal under her belt, but Irene, I know she knows more. Like, that's the obvious thing about Irene, is Irene has that aspect of enchanter and knows way more and is way more powerful, but obviously the thing that is useful to Wendy is just the knowledge in the wide array of new enchantment ideas that she could get. So maybe this will be a fight that she could use to develop her own types of new enchantments. Maybe Wendy could figure out a way to adapt to his speed through a type of enchantment. And that was a panel I really want to get to, because I'm upset with the fan translation team. So I'm not going to complain, but it was one of my favorite things about the chapter. So I'm not going to go into like power level stuff, like not the time for this. Because when he says in the panel, and I'll talk about obviously what happens afterwards in a moment, but he rushes by Wendy, he just blitzes right past, and he says like the white tiger dragon is really fast, and it's as fast as the speed of light. I don't want to even go into power levels and stuff again, because like there's multiple feats that are way faster than speed of light of people reacting to the speed of light things in Fairy Tail. It's the fact that in the Japanese version, there's quotation marks around light. So I think that the idea of whatever he means, because obviously he's not necessarily meaning light speed when he says light. He's actually, he's alluding to something else. And I think that something else is what's going to be the description of what his type of dragon slaying attribute is. That's what I think, at least, because otherwise what's the point of putting quotations around specifically light? I really just think Mishima is trying to put in a hint. it's kind of like what we saw with, obviously Suzaku's swordplay, and then we see the effects that he has on different like elements and whatnot and different attacks as a Sword Saint Dragon Slayer. And clearly with Kirin, the whole stuff about stuff like with his force fields and stuff and his messing with the atmosphere is going to be revealed to his Dragon Slaying attribute. And there was a theory, I have to give praise. If somebody in the comments, just tell me, because this is somebody told me this on Twitter, and I really like the idea. They said, what if Misaki is a magnetism Dragon Slayer? And I'm like, that would be super cool. That would be so scary then if Gajeel runs into her, because Mishiba would have to give Gajeel such an absurd type of advantage, boost, some type of event to give Gajeel a boost. Because I had an idea for a boost for Gajeel, and that's a video I still gotta do, but it would require us to get to Viernes, which I don't think obviously is going to come into play here. Maybe he could eat something in the labyrinth to get a boost, some form of mineral that came off of Dogromag. You could obviously link earth and metal together, so maybe there's something in this. And I did say there's something I will repeat throughout this arc, and this is another reason why, is Gajeel. I think Gajeel deserves a really big W in this arc, because though Gajeel hasn't really had anything in a long time, and he's had stuff at a personal character level that's been really nice for him, which I do appreciate. But when it comes to battle, and I don't mean to again refer to it as power level stuff, but it's more from the point is if a character doesn't keep up certain levels of power, they can't stay as relevant to certain events. You can look again at something like the Z Fighters in Dragon Ball, or a lot of the ninjas in Naruto. You have to keep certain amounts of certain characters within a range to be able to keep them around. Obviously, the main character can be a different kind of position, because the main character usually will end up fighting the main boss. But for the other characters, you have to keep them at least somewhat within sizable kind of area. And we have a good area for Gajeel after we saw his skirmish with Natsu. But again, that's when I mentioned that Gajeel hasn't really had anything. In Alvarez, he got the power up. He got Dragon Force when he ate the anti-magic double particles for the amounts of iron in them. But that was a really cool part. But it's different from a current level feat power up versus a temporary power up. Obviously it was really cool, and I still really like that whole fight for Gajeel's character and everything that came around it, and obviously resulted with him and Levi. But with everything around the aspect of him as current in combat, we haven't really seen much other than that kind of small amount for him and Natsu in Drasil, but that was mostly off panel. We got a good first chapter skirmish, but then Natsu and him went in their hybrid forms, and we didn't really see anything else. And it was still good because it was definitely an upgraded level for Gajeel, because Gajeel didn't have anything to kind of put him around how strong he was from feats, because his, the feat in the last arc in Alvarez was a feat from a temporary power-up. So as far as we knew, Gajeel was still at that level where he was getting manhandled by a Spriggan, where most of the other characters are in Spriggan now. Then we got that feat, which is good for him. Put him in a solid spot going forward. And that still, I think, carried on into not a lot other than a good chunk. But that's he, between the last time he had a really good, I think, personal fight, which again, the reason I'm not counting the Bloodman fight, because it was in how I'm describing it, it was temporary power up, versus his fight with, I guess you can kind of think of it the same sort of way with Tartaros as well, which again, that one's a little different because it was not nearly as big of a gap. Part of the problem Gajeel had was he couldn't breathe, so it came down to an ability thing. If Gajeel and Tempesta fought outside of the water, and again, it's a weird combo of counters to advantages, because you have to think of it like this. It makes sense scientifically and magically, how Gajeel's abilities work. And I just want to go off this real quick, because obviously it's not relevant to this chapter, but it's relevant to upcoming events and obviously aspects of a character. And I definitely do want to talk about this, because Gajeel, again, as I mentioned, I think he deserves a really good chunk in this arc. But Gajil in that fight obviously was at a disadvantage because he couldn't breathe, and that was one of the things that was really hurting him in his fight with Torafusa. I think I said Tempesta earlier, but yeah, Torafusa, my bad. With Torafusa, he was gaining the advantage because of that, but also obviously he is better moving around in the water. So that, like, his ability makes it better for him, but also worse for his enemies. But because he has the poison in the water, and again, it makes sense that he has them in the water for, you know, the guild he's in, obviously what he is. But because of that, it ended up working its way to Gajil's favor. So I can't really count that, because Gajil was only losing as bad as he was because he was at a disadvantage, while he was at an advantage because of how his ability works, whereas Torafusa was only at a double advantage because of movement buff, pretty much, and a hindrance on Gajil's breathing ability. So I feel like that one's more fair because of how things mechanically work out. And then before that, what do you really have is like the fights with Sting and Rogue, because that one's a little different too, because like Gajil beat Rogue just fine. We knew Gajil had to be somewhere around Natsu's level, like between. I assume that he would be somewhere around kind of like a chunk above base Natsu. Like Natsu would need Lightning Flame Dragon to beat Rogue at that point, because he wasn't even going all out against Rogue when he was 1v1ing him. He was clearly going easy on him. He just got mad when Rogue said what he said about him not being as strong as Natsu. But he hasn't had a ton between a lot of these. The standpoint I want to use specifically is Alvarez to now. You only really had that small piece of him getting again a good spot for him power-wise against Natsu. But Laxus had a really good fight against Urza, good display, a really good character moment. It gave both of them good feats. It gave Laxus a new form. Urza got 2 new weapons in her arsenal. Obviously, she got a lot of like durability feats against like Laxus and stuff. There's a lot of really good stuff from multiple areas, not just from like characters, feats, fighting capabilities and stuff, but also again their own characters. Like a lot of the dialogue at the end between Urza and Lactus was really good, and it did a lot, I think, for interactions between them. It was a really good moment between them as a character, and obviously them as characters being the same guild should have a good relationship. And I think it did wonders for specifically like the spots between Urza and Laxus, because they've been around obviously some of the longest, and they're in that upper area as well of the guild. So all around good stuff for that. But again, that's all Gajil had, and then now we still haven't got anything for really kind of even close to comparison for that for Gajil in a long time. And when you look at it, it's like Wendy after Tartaros learned how to achieve Dragon Force on her own. Laxus, after his fight with Wall, learned how to hone the red lightning so he could use it both in base, and then also on top of that developed a form around it that has its own like berserker effect. You know, the more he bleeds, the more damage he takes, the more powerful his lightning can become. Whereas Gajil didn't get anything. Again, Gajil got a good set of feats that put him in a spot, but Gajil didn't come in with anything new. And when you leave an arc with a temporary power-up and then go into another arc with nothing kind of that you've done over the past year. And the thing with Gajil that's really weird about it is he went on lots of jobs. He canonically went on multiple areas of, you know, just job quest hunts to build up money from just for like accumulation for the kids that he's gonna have with Levi. Because obviously, like, we as readers know it's gonna be the twins, and I don't think they know whatsoever it's gonna be 2. I gonna assume, because I don't know why Mishimu would do so much with like the specific 2, and then in both the like light novel, I don't know if the light novel is supposed to be canon, but there is obviously them in the flashback, not the flashback, I guess it's more of the visual idea of what Gajil had when he thought he was gonna die with Bloodman, because the light novel part came first, so clearly he wanted to use that idea and keep it in canon. So we'll have to see about that. Like Greige and Nasha look like the versions he drew at a convention for fans and decided to keep the designs and put him in. But with Gajeel just hasn't had anything to really kind of move up him in terms of like his capabilities story. And I think he definitely deserves it, some type of new form, because obviously Natsu and him at their fight put him at a good level again, but he's like Gray, where Gray hasn't really got anything new. Gray got a nice new way to use his magic in his fight with Hakune, but Gray hasn't gotten anything extra to like his whole, you know, his design and build as a character. Like Urza's getting like showing off ways she can utilize new armors, she's showing new weapons, when he's obviously getting more enchants. Natsu's getting some new techniques. He's got like the whole stuff obviously with like how powerful he might become and whatnot stuff. Lucy's getting extra stuff. There's lots of upgrades and stuff for everybody, but except for the two. But Gray obviously has gotten more screen time, where I feel like Gajeel, I feel like Under Heroes Quest with Gajeel would have been so cool. But I'm fine with him being like a character to come in. And obviously this is where he's supposed to come in. So if this is the only part where he's really going to get a big role, because back in Drasil again, he didn't have that big of a role. He got kind of like two small roles, because he got the part where he got to fight Natsu, good for him, and then he had a cool scene role where he fought the big Alderaan to help Natsu as they, Natsu got Dragon Force all set on, and then, proceed to fight him. It was cool, but it's like, again, nothing for him. I've actually really liked the idea of Gajeel learning magic to become really big. It's like the idea after that, because I've said it a couple times too, with Brandish's magic, he wouldn't have to learn the whole magic. He doesn't have to learn how to alter sizes of everything. He doesn't have to learn the whole branch of how Command T works. But he could just learn the spell to get big. And Gajeel's not dumb. I feel like Gajeel could learn how to do one spell just fine, and then apply his magic to it. And Mishima could do something really cool with it, where he could kind of tie that into like him paying some respects to Makarov, and obviously Makarov's giant magic. Maybe he could learn it from Makarov. That would be actually really cool. Actually, I think that would be even cooler if he fought kind of like Makarov in like a hybrid style, where he's combining like the ability with like one limb. Instead we get like a giant sword Gajeel, or maybe like a giant club, or maybe giant new attacks. Maybe you can do something like extra fancy or cool with it, like just more metal, more to work with. Who knows? Either way, like there's definitely possibilities for him, and I hope there's something. And that's a rant that I wanted to put in this video, because it's up and coming. I really hope Gajeel gets something. It's been so long since we've gotten a really good bonus for him, but we'll see. Either way, back to what was going on, obviously, with like Wendy and Haku. The OP ability that Haku had, because again, I really wish they kept the quotations on the whole light, because I think that is supposed to be a teaser as to what he's actually as a Dragoneer, what his Dragon Slate type is. But he ended up pulling the personality of Irene out of Wendy. This was weird. So, because when people think about it, it'd be like, oh, well, he pulled out, like, he can affect souls or something, or the magic. That's not how that works, because Irene isn't Irene's soul, like, put into Wendy's body after she died. This is a copy of her personality that is now going to try and remanifest, but it is at its base, despite being an enchantment, it is a copy of her personality. So this isn't a soul. This is the entire, like, pretty much magical duplicate of her whole being in, like, it's weird. It's like a one-to-one copy, but it's technically not her, but it is at the same time. Kind of almost like a clone, but not entirely when you think about it, but sort of. But the fact that he grabbed it, and he, like, it was really crazy to me, because I think a lot of people end up thinking it was like souls and stuff, but it's like, no, it's actually way more wild than that. Is he says that he can change personas into plushies too, so he can affect thoughts and like things made out of literally just like figments of imagination, almost, I would almost assume, kind of things. Because Irene again isn't, she's not anything other than a enchantment of who she is. She's just a set of ideas, and he didn't say magic, he said specifically the personas, which is pretty broken. Like, I wonder the extent, like, that he can grab and his magic can affect. And I do think it can make sense because like we've had characters affect concepts before up in these upper levels, and his is done in a way that's not, it's not like a destruction ability, it's not like a direct kill ability, you like can kill them, but it's like a combination with this really strong hacks that you can use. But I feel like it can be countered. That's another thing. Like, it's not like you get by Savage Dragonfire and you don't have Angstrom's Curse, or you get hit by Metamori and no way to counter it, you're gonna be gone. Whereas like something like this, if you get turned into a plushie, but you have the ability to negate it afterwards, the effect, like something like that Wendy can do, that's a different story. That makes it a little bit more fair. But obviously he's also really powerful. And at the end of the chapter, there was one thing that I'm not too sure about, but obviously we're gonna have to wait and see in the next chapter, maybe in a quick flashback or something from Laxus that he'll mention, because the way that these two chapters have been formatted is so frustrating to me, because it's like it completely just decided to take what I wanted to happen, change it in a good way, but then also at the end be like, also here, we're gonna get back to that fight real quick, and we're gonna see how this goes. Because I like the Haku chapter, I liked seeing Haku and stuff, but I really wanted to see the effects of Kieran being serious, but also what his, magic in-depth more does. And there's the fact Laxus have smoldering marks on his body, which is, to me, when you think about, again, manipulating the atmosphere, this is, again, the easiest way that I can really think about it, unless there's some other way that he could, create heat or friction. I would assume at least the most simplistic way of messing with the atmosphere would be he would be making lightning clouds and then shooting lightning at Laxus. And that's something that I really want to know about, because if he has lightning that's overpowering Laxus, that obviously is going to make him even more dangerous than he is. And that would be really crazy if Mishima decides to go that route. Maybe it's a different thing that he's doing. Maybe he is doing something maybe more akin to like Minerva, where he's altering areas of like the atmosphere to be really hot or to do something, maybe cause an explosion. He's already done similar attacks, but like obviously this is like smoldering on his body. So unless it's just like different techniques where it's just like the effects of his other attacks applying to him does this, at least from what I'm wondering, if it is like directly smoldering and it's not just his attacks, if it is just, a higher version of his like atmosphere attacks, whatever, like I'm fine with either. I just like the idea, obviously, of him manipulating the atmosphere to a degree of like affecting the weather, because I'm pretty sure the Kieran animal in mythologies is something that affects the weather. I think it makes it rain or something. So obviously to me, I think that would make sense of that he would affect weather, like storm clouds and stuff, and just be able to alter it in different ways. I think that'd be really cool, because obviously the yellow color as well makes me think lightning, and regular lightning obviously wouldn't, that wouldn't affect Lax at all. This would have to be something extra, because obviously it does come with like dragon aspects on top of it. It wouldn't really make sense if it didn't, because I was like, are they gonna like make some weird thing about like Laxus not being able to do stuff with normal lightning? But it's like, no, they've definitely showed him like he can no diff normal lightning just fine. I remember that like there's like the one anime episode, but then there is the canon of Gajil just kind of like sitting under a freaking waterfall getting struck by lightning, just kind of prepping for maybe fighting Laxus and getting hit by one of his lightning bolts. So it's like, yeah, that's all the confirmation I need for the deep for sure about level above it. But I thought this was a good chapter. As much as I wanted to get to the Laxus and Kieran stuff, I thought this was interesting. I like this fight. I like Haku's character so far. Like, he's one that I've wondered about a lot, and the fact that even though we didn't get more of the Laxus Kieran fight, that did prove one thing that I really wanted to know about, and that was what Wendy's ability to counter the effects of the whole plushie thing, pretty much. So, I don't really need to go into too much, because it's obviously what it goes down as it goes down in the chapter. We just see it for one. So I was pretty happy about that, but the whole stuff with Kieran at the end, I'm just really hoping we, after that point in the next chapter, have him say something or do something that gives us more information on his type. Because once we have all their types, I'm fine waiting to find out more about what they can do. Because I just want to see exactly what exactly they are supposed to be set as, so I can theorize how they're going to work. Maybe we'll see a display of Kieran's ability in the next chapter. I really want to know like how crazy like the idea of like a dragon that can control the atmosphere is really gonna play out and do. But we'll see, because logically, like with one last thing, it'd be different than like with Wendy when Wendy went Dragon Force against Easel, because Wendy can logically do that, but just with wind and the way that wind works. But Kieran seems to be able to do it in a way that's like manipulating the atmosphere itself with various effects. But we'll have to again wait and see, because obviously compressing and distorting it and clearly doing some form of heat damage is, you know, an extra level up. So we'll see. I feel like he's gonna have something like Azuma where he uses a magic as an extra effect to kind of like produce a completely different effect. So just really kind of neat way that he's developed it into, but we'll see. Other than that, comment below. Obviously, this is going to be a longer one. I have that long Gajo rant, but on that, comment below. Thumbs up the video, for the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. From that, appreciate everybody's subscribe, and thank you all for listening. Bye.